For 15 years, the chapter house had stood at the corner of Maple Street in downtown Asheville, North Carolina, warm, two-story brick building nestled between a flower shop and a bakery. It wasn't just a bookstore. It was home. To the local teens who found refuge in its young adult section. To the retired veterans who came in for coffee and morning chess. To every book club, poetry night, and storytelling circle that ever passed through its doors. And now, it was on the brink of being erased. Elena Brooks, 41, stood silently beside her attorney inside the Buncombe County Courthouse. Her palms were damp, her jaw tight, but her back was straight. She had spent weeks preparing for this hearing, gathering documents, signatures, letters from local schools and nonprofits. Still, nothing could fully brace her for this moment. Across the aisle, a man in a sharp gray suit from Fairpoint Urban Properties scrolled on his phone, barely glancing her way. Their excuse? Structural violations, ones that didn't exist until she refused their final buyout offer. The plan was clear. Bulldoze the past, put up luxury condos, and cash in. Elena wasn't just fighting to save her livelihood. She was fighting for everything the store had come to represent. The smell of old paperbacks, the squeak of the wood floors, the generations of stories exchanged across a counter scratched by time. This wasn't just about square footage or rent disputes. It was about memory, about belonging. And though she was terrified, Elena knew one thing. If she didn't stand up now, they'd take everything. This courtroom wasn't just a place for rulings today, it was a battlefield. And the chapter house wasn't going down without a fight. Judge Harold Grayson was a name Elena Brooks had heard whispered about long before she stepped foot inside courtroom 2B. He was 63, silver-haired, and stone-faced, known across Buncombe County for his ironclad rulings and absolute intolerance for what he deemed nonsense. Attorneys dreaded drawing his court. Plaintiffs called him cold. Defendants called him cruel. And today, Elena would finally see for herself what kind of man sat behind that polished oak bench. From the moment he entered, robe swaying, gavel in hand, the room seemed to shrink. Conversations hushed. Even the air felt heavier. He didn't look at Elena right away. He didn't need to. The indifference in his posture, the boredom in his sigh as he flipped through her case file, those were loud enough. This was the man with the power to decide her fate in a matter of minutes. A man who'd built a career on siding with big business, developers, and cold hard contracts. A man who called empathy a distraction. Elena sat still, fingers clasped in her lap, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The courtroom lights buzzed above her, and the polished wooden pews behind her creaked softly as a few supporters shifted uncomfortably. Her attorney, Marcus Hawley, leaned in and whispered, "Stay calm. Don't let him rattle you." But it was too late for that. Grayson finally looked up, his pale blue eyes scanning her like she was an item on a grocery list. He adjusted his glasses, tilted his head, and gave the faintest curl of a smile. It wasn't kind. It was dismissive. In that moment, Elena knew this wasn't just a legal hearing. It was a performance. And Judge Grayson had already decided how he wanted it to end. But she wasn't going to let him write the final act. Elena had barely settled into her seat when Judge Grayson set the tone for the morning, with a loud sigh and an exaggerated flip of her case file like it was a fast food menu. He glanced over the pages with all the enthusiasm of a DMV worker 2 minutes before closing. He muttered, resting his chin in one hand. "A bookstore owner, huh?" Elena lifted her chin. "Yes, Your Honor, for 15 years. Grayson arched an eyebrow, already unimpressed. "A bookstore. In 2025? He let out a dry chuckle that echoed off the courtroom walls. People still read those things? A few uncomfortable coughs floated from the gallery. Elena's attorney, Marcus, cleared his throat. "Your Honor, My client runs a community-centered business that—" "Oh, please," Grayson interrupted, waving his hand like he was swatting a fly. "Let me guess, story time with cupcakes and hugs? That's adorable." A ripple of laughter came from the corporate side of the room. Elena gritted her teeth. She'd heard plenty of dismissive remarks over the years, but something about the way Grayson leaned back in that leather chair, hands folded like a king over his tiny wooden kingdom, it lit a spark in her gut. "This is not a joke," she said firmly. Grayson's eyes twinkled with mock interest. "No? Well, you're fighting an eviction from a billion-dollar development firm with 5 attorneys and more. Political connections that I can count on both hands. You might want to lower those expectations, Miss Brooks." He smirked. That damn smirk. The kind that said, "You've already lost." Elena felt her pulse in her ears. But she didn't flinch. Because while Judge Grayson was busy mocking her bookstore, he had no idea he was about to become the story everyone would be reading about. Marcus Hawley, Elena's attorney, stepped forward with all the calm swagger of a man holding a royal flush. He smoothed his tie, held up a binder thick enough to be used as a doorstop, and spoke into the courtroom's thick silence. "Your Honor, we have documentation proving that the violations cited by Fairpoint Urban Properties were not only fabricated but conveniently appeared right after my client declined 3 separate be-out offers." He opened the binder with a crisp thwack as if the evidence itself deserved a mic drop. Judge Grayson didn't even look up. "Are you suggesting a respected development firm is engaging in fraud?" "I'm not suggesting, sir. I'm stating it with receipts," Marcus replied smoothly, sliding a stack of printed emails and contractor statements across the bench like playing cards at a poker table. Elena fought the urge to grin. They had spent weeks gathering every shady email, every text from nervous contractors, every time-stamped building inspection that magically reversed itself overnight. "This is a conspiracy theory," scoffed the opposing counsel. A young guy in a $3,000 suit who looked like he got his law degree and hair gel from the same place. Coincidence isn't a crime. Marcus didn't even blink. Then it must be quite the coincidence that 6 other small businesses on that same block were hit with near-identical violations, right before being replaced by a Pilates studio and a gourmet donut bar. Someone in the gallery let out a quiet, "Oh, damn." Judge Grayson narrowed his eyes. Elena leaned forward just slightly, voice calm but cutting. "They came for the baker, the tailor, the record store, and now they're coming for me. But this time, we kept the receipts." The judge opened his mouth to reply, then closed it again. For once, even he didn't have a snarky comeback. Just when Elena thought Judge Grayson had run out of ways to insult her intelligence, he leaned forward, rested his elbows on the bench, and delivered the line that sucked all the air out of the room. "You people love playing the victim, don't you?" Silence. Even the court stenographer hesitated, fingers hovering above the keys like she wasn't sure she heard him right. Elena blinked. "Did he just say you people?" Marcus stiffened beside her, his voice turning steel. "Your Honor, let the record reflect that the court's neutrality has been compromised by that statement." Grayson waved him off with a smug little flick of his hand. "Oh, come on. Let's not get dramatic. Too late." The gallery behind Elena had gone completely still. Even the bailiff, a man built like a linebacker with the poker face of a mannequin, shifted awkwardly near the bench. Nobody was laughing now. Elena stood up slowly, her voice cool and razor-sharp. "Excuse me?" Grayson gave a dismissive shrug, like he was bored with the whole performance. "I said what I said. You're dragging this out because you don't like the outcome. Happens all the time." Marcus leaned forward. "With all due respect, Your Honor, a sitting judge making prejudicial comments in open court is not a footnote. It's a fire alarm." Grayson's smirk faltered, just for a second. "Are you accusing me of bias?" "I'm pointing out that your commentary reflects it," Marcus snapped back. Elena didn't speak. She didn't need to. She simply stared at the judge with a look that said, "You messed with the wrong woman today." And for the first time since this whole circus began, Grayson looked a little less sure of himself. Elena was ready to fire back. Her fists were clenched, her jaw tight, and Judge Grayson's smug expression was still tattooed across her memory like a bad high school yearbook quote. But before she could speak, there was a sound small but sharp that cut through the courtroom tension like a needle through silk. Scry-up, a chair moved. Heads turned. Two men in dark suits stood up at the back of the gallery. No rustling of papers, no side comments, just quiet. Precise movement that had the kind of gravity even Judge Grayson couldn't ignore. They weren't reporters. They weren't lawyers. They had that undeniable federal energy, the kind that says, "We're not here to play." Grayson narrowed his eyes. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The taller agent stepped forward, calm as a surgeon. "Your Honor, we need a word. Now." He held up a sleek leather badge wallet. "Agent Daniel Reyes, Department of Justice." The courtroom froze. Elena didn't dare breathe. Even Marcus looked like someone had just handed him front row tickets to karma. Grayson scoffed, trying to brush it off. "If this isn't about this case, you're interrupting a live hearing." "Oh, it's very much about this case," Agent Reyes said, pulling out a neatly folded document like he was about to read bedtime stories. "Only this one came with felony charges." The other agent, a sharp-eyed woman with "don't mess with me" energy, stepped closer. "Ma'am," she said, glancing at the court reporter, "please ensure this is entered into the record." Elena's heart was thudding like a drum solo. Whatever this was, she had just gone from underdog plaintiff to the unwitting star of the courtroom takedown of the decade. And Judge Grayson? Let's just say that smirk was long gone. Grayson's fingers gripped the edge of his bench like he could hold his power in place if he just squeezed hard enough. Agent Reyes, cool as ever, unfolded the paper with the kind of dramatic pause that could give any Netflix scriptwriter a run for their money. "Judge Harold Grayson," he began, voice steady, "you are under federal investigation for multiple counts of bribery, judicial misconduct, and civil rights violations." The gallery gasped like an audience at the plot twist of a soap opera they knew was coming, but still weren't ready for. Elena blinked. "Wait, what?" This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a full-blown takedown. "You've accepted financial compensation from corporate entities in exchange for biased rulings." Reyes continued, his tone razor-sharp. "You've dismissed lawsuits with merit, tampered with evidence, and intimidated legal staff to protect your allies." Grayson's face went pale. "This is absurd," he hissed. "Do you have any idea who I know?" Agent Reyes didn't even blink. "We do. That's exactly why we're here." The female agent stepped up, producing a second document. "As of this moment, you are relieved of your judicial duties pending further investigation." Even the bailiff looked confused, like someone had swapped the script while he was offstage. Grayson opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For once, the man who always had everything to say sarcasm, scorn, and superiority was absolutely speechless. And Elena? She sat there, still as stone, her expression unreadable. Inside, 1,000 feelings swirled: shock, vindication, a wicked little dose of poetic justice. The king of the courtroom had just been dethroned. And the best part? It was all on the record. Judge Grayson was still clinging to the edge of his power like a man gripping the last French fry in a fast food bag full of grease and pride. "You've got some nerve, walking into my courtroom like this," he barked. Agent Reyes didn't flinch. "It's not your courtroom anymore." Then came the moment. The female agent, Agent Lewis, reached behind her belt and pulled out a pair of silver handcuffs with the confidence of someone who'd done this more times than she could count. The entire courtroom gasped, collectively leaning in like it was the season finale of a legal drama. Even the stenographer stopped typing for a beat, probably wondering if she should switch careers and start writing screenplays. Grayson jolted to his feet. "Wait a damn second." "No more seconds, Your Honor," Reyes said, his tone all business. "You are under arrest." The first cuff clicked. That tiny metal sound? It echoed louder than any gavel Grayson had ever slammed. The judge, once so smug, so untouchable now, looked like a man whose entire castle had crumbled. His face flushed, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the room like someone might still jump up and save him. Spoiler, no one did. The bailiff? Frozen. Opposing counsel? Pretending to read a very interesting spot on his shoe? And Elena? She just sat there, watching the man who tried to humiliate her get paraded out in cuffs like a bonus scene from Law and Order Karma Unit. As Grayson was escorted past her, their eyes locked. His were full of hate, hers, calm, steady, unshaken. Because for the first time in this courtroom, the scales were tipping. And they were tipping in her favor. The courtroom door clicked shut behind Judge Grayson, the sound final, almost symbolic. For a few seconds, no one moved, no one spoke. It was like the entire room had exhaled at once, letting go of something they didn't realize they were holding in. Elena sat motionless, still processing what had just happened. Her case wasn't over. The bookstore wasn't magically safe. But something bigger had shifted. The man who mocked her, dismissed her, underestimated her, had left in handcuffs. Her attorney, Marcus, leaned toward her with an incredulous half-smile. "I'd say that worked out in our favor." Elena let out a quiet, stunned laugh. "I didn't even know that could happen." "You'd be surprised what happens when people stop being afraid," Marcus said. And that right there was the lesson. Because for too long, Elena had believed that people like her didn't stand a chance. That big companies had the money, the lawyers, the friends in high places. That if the system didn't work for you, you just had to take the hit and move on. But not today. Today proved that corruption can fall. That power built on fear and arrogance can be brought down not by a riot or a headline, but by truth, patience, and guts. Elena looked behind her. The gallery was filled with small business owners, community members, young people who had grown up reading in her store. They had shown up for her, but maybe also for themselves, to see if justice was even possible. And for once it was. As the federal agents handed her a business card stamped with the Department of Justice seal, Elena realized this fight wasn't just about a bookstore. It never had been. It was about standing up when no one thinks you will, and refusing to sit down ever again. Elena stepped out into the bright North Carolina sun, the courthouse doors closing behind her like the end of a long, heavy chapter. The crowd outside had already started to gather reporters with microphones, camera crews jostling for space, and neighbors who had followed every step of her fight like it was their own. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Dozens of texts, social media notifications, people she hadn't heard from in years, cheering her on. But Elena wasn't thinking about headlines or hashtags. She was thinking about every person who'd ever felt too small to fight back. The baker who lost his storefront when rent tripled overnight. The yoga teacher who couldn't afford legal help when the developer came knocking. The single mom who never had a chance to speak because people like Judge Grayson never let her. This victory wasn't just about the chapter house. It wasn't even just about corruption in one courtroom. It was about the idea that your voice matters even when the odds say it doesn't. Especially when the odds say it doesn't. Standing there, Elena realized something. Courage isn't loud. It's not always fists in the air or viral speeches. Sometimes it's quieter, slower. It looks like staying in the fight when everyone says it's over. It sounds like refusing to accept no when you know you deserve better. As Marcus walked up beside her, he said softly, "You didn't just defend your business today, Elena. You reminded people that justice isn't some distant dream, it's something we have to demand. She nodded, gripping the DOJ card in her hand. Her case would continue, but the message was clear. You stand, you speak. And sometimes, the world listens.